Mere mortals, welcome back to another edition of the Conversations with Juan this time. I know I haven't done too many so far. It's been busy. Current's been manning the helm, but today I had the pleasure to talk to Trent, a certified evangelist and certified coach. I also worked with Trent a little while back at a federal government agency. And, I got to have a conversation today with him around his passion for flying, how he transitioned from that being a pilot into IT, the role of Agile, his life, the lifestyle that he lives. He lives a bit of a rural lifestyle. So we got into quite a few different discussions. Obviously, he has seen a broad, a diverse way to have conversations with businesses and individuals about being agile, about being flexible, and about being durable. So I'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Now, this is Trent Mason.
I actually had as part of this conversation, I thought, all right, Trent seems like a pretty interesting guy. I had a conversation when you came up to Brisbane not too long ago. We talked, a myriad of things, which is quite interesting. But the one I wanted to start off with, right, was the pilot license and flying. Can you tell me a little bit about what got you into flying, and is it really as difficult as I think it is?
So that's a good question, a good place to kick off. I would say that from the time I was a little boy, I wanted to be a pilot and wanted to fly planes. And then life got in the way, I suppose. And I went and did a whole bunch of other things, and it sort of was lost. And then when I finished high school and went to university, I was first year, I was into my architectural engineering degree, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I was enjoying. So I thought, what am I going to do? What can I do that I really want to go and do that I enjoy? So I thought, I want to get back into have a looking at flying and what that sort of is all about and things like that. So I basically kicked off just looking at what that would look like, and went and did some introductory flight lessons and things like that, and it was absolutely awesome. It was everything that I hoped it would be, and it was really, really lots of fun. In terms of, is it as hard as you think it would be? Not necessarily. So to kick off and get things going, I think you can definitely get into it and have it as a hobby and things like that, without a real kind of in-depth understanding, or I guess a real in-depth study. When you start looking at going further into your air transport pilot's license and things like that, there's a lot of discipline, a lot of study, and a lot of that sort of stuff that comes into it at that end.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I actually have a close friend as well who he actually went off to Papua New Guinea to go and do his full sort of flying and license to get into proper flying. But of course, COVID came in and absolutely just wrecked that idea, which was interesting. But did you ever get to actually fly then where you were, I guess, flying on your own, or at least with someone sort of supervising you?
Yeah, so I got all the way up to my commercial pilot's license.
Okay.
But that was just that was a small single engine aircraft. So, your Cessna 172, 182, kind of four-seater stuff. Now, I never actually flew commercially for money, but I got the commercial pilot's license going down that path of wanting to fly for a career.
Yeah, right.
So that's where I sort of got with it. Now, where your friends ended up and gone to Papua New Guinea, that's sort of where I realised it might not be for me. I was doing some other work and some interesting things in my life, and it was kind of like, do I want to follow this down the path where I have to sort of, move out to the middle of Australia or overseas somewhere, living in a shanty or shack with four other people and, earning peanuts with my quite serious girlfriend now at the time. And, do I want to then, if I continue to follow this, potentially be away from home 4 days a week, back home, basically doing shift work and not really aligning with my values of what I see in terms of friends and family. So I sort of actually chose to go down the path of, working and doing what I do now more in a sense, and then being able to fly for a hobby and fun and, shoot over to the coast and, do those sorts of things, do my aerobatics and stuff like that. rather than sort of make a career out of it and become an airline pilot, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. And how old were you then when you obviously made that decision of, okay, you're going to pursue this in a commercial sense and then, I guess, move into the area that you are in now?
So I think I would have probably been, it probably was around between 23 to 26, I guess that phase was happening.
Yeah. And so, all right, so obviously you position yourself, you studied for a little while, decided, now I'm going to go flying. Is that up to a point? No, that's still going to be the lifestyle. What triggered you then to go from flying, that experience and what it is, to, I guess, IT and broadly we get into discussions of Agile, but what made you go into that direction? Was there helping hand? Did you have previous experience? What sort of led you down that path?
I think, and that's a really good question because I've never really reflected on that as a question. So I appreciate you asking me that actually. When I was working in that IT space, I was working on the business side of IT. And what I was noticing through those sort of, mid to late 2000s, 2010, 2012, that kind of period. And this is probably not something new, but I was noticing on the business side and then having just a general IT knowledge and a bit of understanding that there seemed to be a lot of miscommunication and that both sides were wanting to do really good jobs and both sides, IT and business were really trying to do the right thing for each other, but there was a mismatch of communication there. And so I was a business analyst on the business side and trying to really sort of bridge that gap between business IT was something that I really, really enjoyed and something that was coming really naturally to me and I guess something that I sort of almost stumbled into in terms of, this fits really well with me and I'm enjoying the idea of pursuing this more than I'm enjoying the idea of flying for a career.
Yeah, no, certainly. Can you give me an example where you saw, because it's the bridging the gap between business and tech, and for those who aren't in the IT space, right? It's, it almost ends up you find yourself that you always have crucial issues there. If you got tech speaking their own tech, you got business thinking about the customer and different things, and then that connection, that bridging the gap can obviously be quite a challenge. What's an example that you saw, originally as you were getting into it, that you went, oh, actually, this is either really important or, okay, I can actually do this bridge here of the two ideas and discussions?
Yeah, I think there's almost a point that sticks out in my mind, and it's not a big point. It's just a little thing that kind of really made me go, wait a minute, what's going on here? And it was basically business wanted a report to be developed, and they had very specific things that they wanted that report for. Tech or IT knew how to develop that report, but were trying to influence or tell business how it could be done better or what they can't do or what they can be doing differently. And there was this whole kind of just clash of loggerheads and everyone stayed in there and no one seemed to go, okay, let's bring this all together and go, how do we actually achieve the best outcome for what we're ultimately trying to achieve and our customers? It was kind of we want this report with these requirements. And IT was like, well, we can build that, but it's going to cost you this much money. And we've got all these other options and solutions that we can do, but you might have to wait a bit longer, but it's going to be really good. And it was kind of like, who's this report serving in the end? Where's the customer? Who's thinking about anyone besides, what they've got in their own little sort of box? So it was kind of like, how do we take that systems level approach and come up a level? And I guess that was sort of the thing to me. It was kind of like this, it wasn't a can we all get along moment, but it was kind of like a, guys, let's step back and up for a minute and go, what are we trying to achieve again?
Yeah, it's amazing how often we lose sight of either the why, why you're actually doing something, and you get so deep into the loop of, let's just do something, and that might be creating reports, it might be having the conversations, it might be making a product, and you don't stop and go, actually, what's the real reason we're putting in this effort? What's the point of it all? So, yeah, it's a great point. When obviously you did that for a little while, right now, place me, how long did that take until you started your Scrum Master role? And for those who don't know what that sort of entails, it's essentially a pseudo team lead, if you want to think about it, but it's more of a servant leader in an Agile practice. So how long did, when did you start being in that Scrum Master lead, and simultaneously, really looking at seriously the Agile methodology and the Agile practices?
So I think it was around 3 to 4 years. And it was more in the business analyst. It moved from a traditional sort of business side business analyst, and then it sort of transitioned through into a business analyst or a BA in a Scrum team. And then it sort of moved into the Scrum Master role. And that was probably over, I guess, 3 to 4 years from sort of 2008 through to sort of 2011, 2012 kind of space is that sort of transition. But it started definitely as the business analyst side and then moved into that Scrum Master role. So
no, certainly. And I think we're going to probably say in this point a little bit, because obviously it ties with what you're doing today. But I want to ask you, so as a Scrum Master, so you obviously saw the transition of business and IT talking to each other, and then you got into the position of overlooking an Agile team. Now, just to place it for everybody, traditionally, you have a waterfall model of delivery, which everything's just sequential. In Agile, I guess what you're trying to achieve there is deliver incremental product or incremental improvements and value to the customer, to the end product, whatever that may be. So there's a little bit of differences there. What did you see that was so powerful, both in Agile when you were working with it, but I think obviously taking a step back, just the Agile mindset in general?
So, and this is where I'll start to probably bring in a lot of my belief and value systems around Agile, where it might sort of, be aligned with a lot of the community, but, different in other spaces as well. And I think for me, Agile is really just good business, and a way to do things where we can be delivering value and then getting feedback from that to give us an understanding of where we should go next, rather than thinking from the start we have all the answers and we know what needs to be done. There's so much power, and you would have seen this as well. There's so much power in front of talking to business and going, we want this screen, and you put that screen in front of them and straight away it's, we want something to change on that screen, or we didn't think it was going to operate, or we didn't think it was going to look like that. And the earlier you can get that screen, in a software sense, the earlier you can get that screen in front of them, the earlier you can start, tweaking it and pointing it in the right direction, rather than sort of building this huge whole application that then sort of doesn't ultimately suit its purpose at the end of it. And that's what I found really powerful, is that connection back through to the end user and the customer, and going, who are we actually building this for? Who's going to be using this? And let's get their input before we get too far down the road.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, and stepping it back for individuals, obviously we're talking, in a business and a work sense, that Agile mindset, it's interesting to note that, when I sort of first knew you as well, Trent, when we were working together, I at that point probably had some inclination of what Agile was, right? We were working in an Agile space. But once I started working in there for a year or 2 years, it was interesting to see how that started also populating back into my everyday life as well, where I might have things that I would have originally gone, I'm going to do this sequentially, right? I'm going to make my breakfast, go and do the workout and do it this exact steps, and it's not going to change. And if something falls out of place, that's fine. And in that almost Agile mindset, it's, you're just wanting to make it work, and that might be shifting and changing and doing in small little bits and seeing what works and what doesn't. Moving forward to today, right? So your current role as it is, so you still work in that Agile space. I want to give the listeners a little bit of more detail there. What exactly do you do now? And then we'll probably get into a few questions today, because I think you'll help enlighten us a little bit, both in the business context and a few other questions as well.
Yeah. So what I do now, and I've been trying to find like a one-liner or an elevator pitch or something that I say that feels natural and doesn't feel like contrived or, some sort of weird sort of long spiel. Ultimately, I am, my goal or my purpose at the moment is to try and help organizations at a holistic level, not just at a team level, use and apply some of these agile principles and values to really increase their alignment to their customers and ultimately increase their business agility. So look at how they as an organization can pivot as a whole. How can a 18,000 or a 20,000 organization operate more like a 10-person startup? And that's not necessarily possible, but how can organizations look to be able to find that balance between stability and agility in that sense?
I mean, why? Because I can already think about it previously to me, really thinking about it in agile mindset. Why would a large company, right, 18,000 people, want to act like like if they've got 10 people? Because you've got obviously the stability of, well, you've got a lot of people, you've got a lot of products and services, you've got everything bedded down, you know what's working. Why would they want to be as agile as 10 individuals or an equivalent of that?
So the obvious answer is market share, making money, happy employees, motivated individuals and things like that. I think ultimately every organization will have its own potentially different reasons, but the ability to be nimble and move as needed is ultimately what will keep you alive and in the marketplace.
No, certainly. Yeah, indeed. And obviously in your time now, and we're talking about 2008, right? So you've seen quite a bit of it now in your working life. Where have you seen, and I guess worked with a client perhaps that you could share? You can, don't have to say names if we don't need to, where you could just see coming in externally, they needed a change, but they couldn't see that. I just want to see, give individuals an example of, because you might not see this individually, whether it's in your company or yourself, working in that practice. What does it look like when they're not following those agile sort of methodologies or practices correctly? And what maybe were the one or two changes that they did to ultimately be a bit more of an agile business?
This is a really interesting point that I think you bring up, because no one in an organization, no team, or, as far as I like to consider, and the majority are all trying to do well and trying to do the right thing. There's not many people, if any, that are really coming to work to do a bad job and to try and do the wrong thing. There's also the other aspect where, we come into these organizations, or you talk to these organizations, and what is it now, 2021? I've been on this journey for 15 years. There's individuals and teams that we're talking to that this is sort of relatively new kind of concepts to them. It might not be new in the industry, but there's these new concepts, and there's this curse of knowledge that it's kind of like you're sitting here going, well, clearly this is the way to be doing things, but you've got to have that, that empathy and awareness and that understanding that for those individuals, what you're saying is going against everything they've ever known and everything that they've sort of ever done that has actually worked in the past as well. And then not only that, when you do try to implement these changes, it's not simple and it's not easy. It's messy and complicated and difficult. And at the end of the day, you're hoping that, it gets results and that people are happier and enjoying what they do. I think where I've seen this recently is, once again, in sort of big organizations that have a very traditional way of doing things, a high level of governance and structure and procedures and processes, coming up against that in terms of we want to make this change, or we want to be able to do this. Oh, well, that, has all of these different flow-on effects. And the thing that, I've found to be most successful or that is working greatest with those teams is small steps, and not trying to, outline this huge, great big change right up front. It's that, agile, applying agile to the agile kind of implementation, or the way that we want to do things. It's sort of that small continual steps of improvement. What we're seeing with a lot of clients and clients that are doing this well is that they're talking less about a transformation initiative and, this is when we'll be agile and what it will look like. It's more about continual improvement and small steps and the narrative around that journey, and this is continual and ongoing.
Yeah, no, certainly, and that's the biggest thing, right? That people may miss with Agile or with any changes. The massive, big bang, humongous changes. Now, sometimes you do need it, but ultimately, some of those changes, especially when you're a bigger organization, that can cause some havoc, right? And I think where we worked together, there was, the way that they applied it there was sort of started off pretty small and slowly grew it out. But similarly, I've seen some Agile implementation in other places where they essentially tried to just flip overnight. Everybody, you're now Agile, you're now working this way. And some people got on board with it, but some people were bedded down in their processes and the way they worked. They just didn't come along for the journey. So, that concept of change management and Agile, trying to change not just the way people work, but the way people think, hitting it, those small portions and improving on it and iterating it can only go better from there. And obviously, so yourself, Trent, you're a practice lead currently in terms of Agile, right? And you work with a whole host of individuals and with businesses. Do you find, and obviously this is more a personal question for yourself, that it's businesses coming to you knowing that they've got this issue and they need some help in either becoming a more agile business, or is it still a very hard sell to show businesses you need this? These are the values and these are the positive things that you got to get from
it. I think it's almost a pretty even split at this point from what I've seen, and this might be different for lots of other companies and organizations. So we've got a number of people, and what we find is that and what I've experienced is that people that have worked with us have gone, this has been really good. This felt different to other Agile initiatives we've done. It feels like you've actually listened to us and been pragmatic and not just come in and said, right, you all need to do stand-ups, write your work on cards.
I wanted just to talk to you about, so obviously we were just talking about Agile in a work context, right, in a business context, and in terms of whether it's a hard sell and having a 50-50 split there. I wanted to ask you now a little bit more personally, right? So obviously you're having conversations with businesses about changing, and this is ultimately them sometimes not seeing that they need to change, sometimes do seeing that they need to change, and obviously having that conversation. So professionally, you're becoming an expert at that. You've got the skills there. How did you go about noticing yourself that you needed to do something about your weight? And so this is something we've talked about previously in person. He's going to tell me a little bit of the story, but I wanted to dig deep. Maybe that, again, what was the impetus? What made you go, dang, okay, I need to do something about this? Because I think it was interesting to hear the story, because I've met enough people and helped support enough people to lose weight to know that it's quite individual in every case. And usually either the impetus or what causes it is usually quite different. So if you could talk about that, I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I have always been a larger boy, not wildly obese, but, on the bigger side. At the same time, I have always as well been a fairly active, competitive, energetic, and outdoor activity kind of sports enthusiast. And so there's always been, I guess, a clash between those two things. At the same time, I really like my food and have always loved my food. So I've always found the discipline of, I guess, managing calories and what I eat to be the hardest aspect. I've always actually been quite energetic and doing a lot of activities and doing a lot of sports, playing hockey, camping, kayaking, all kinds of things. But it was really the food, I guess, that sort of would bring me undone. So there wasn't sort of ever really a point that said, right, get this under control. It was more the symbiosis. And, one of the positives out of COVID was that I was at home and had the discipline to get on top of my food. And I wasn't out and away and, going to those lunches and having beers and things like that. It was almost that sort of catalyst that let me control that food and portion side of things.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, and it's interesting, you mentioned obviously COVID was the catalyst for that. And, I think a lot of people, I think everyone would have experienced some negatives as part of COVID, whether it's you personally or someone you know. But you're right? There was a catalyst for a lot of changes because you had to focus a little bit more on yourself and just in terms of limitations to the space that you were moving, to who you could connect. It just brought you a little bit closer to you and focusing on yourself. So what made you then go, was it the fact that COVID hit that you went, all right, I'm going to build my own little workout bar area at home? Was that sort of the catalyst as well? And that got you into the full sort of calisthenics game as well?
So when COVID hit, like I've always tried everything, man. Like I had like kettlebells at home, like, yeah, I'm going to work out at home. And so I've had a bench press at home. Yeah, I'm going to do bench press at home and stuff like that. And it's never eventuated. Something clicked with calisthenics and something clicked with motivation and inspiration by watching what those guys can do, what those guys and girls can do, and the way they defy gravity and some of those mechanisms and how they do that. And I was like, yes, shit, I want to do that. I want to be that. I've always talked about, I because I do lots of outdoor activities and I do lots of sport and things, that I've always wanted to do my weights or lifting and exercise in a functional way. So, I've done boxing and kettlebells and tried to do compound lifts and things like that, thinking this is going to be more functional. Calisthenics was really the thing that sort of pulled it all together at the right time with COVID, that matched these calorie restrictions. And so this whole kind of, goal alignment sort of thing happened that just turned out to be really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like obviously through the tragedy it was that you found some really positive notes that sort of helped you out and put you on the right track. And obviously, look, knowing you from a couple of years ago to now, I remember when we caught up, I was like, man, that actually Trent? I didn't recognize it. So obviously, big kudos for the big weight loss and the transformation there. I was also really interested, so I'm curious about it. You don't live in your typical sort of house, or at least little land plot that most Australians do in the West Coast, right? You're obviously Canberra-based at the moment. How big is, so where do you live at the moment? Is it, because I know you were mentioning sort of a farmland. So what's life like, living in a bit more of a rural area?
So we are about an hour east of Canberra, actually in the Great Dividing Ranges, probably between 700 and 800 metres. And we are on 23 acres, of which probably about 20 of it is bushland, and around 3 of it is sort of what we have to maintain. And I mean, there's still maintenance with the rest of it in terms of, what does life look like? So a really good example, this week we've had a 20-ton excavator and bulldozer in, clearing all 10 metres in from all of our fences all around our fences, because they were overgrown. So we've had to clear all of that so we can access all the fences, so I can repair all the fences, so that we can put some livestock on there to keep all of the grass and bushland down, because that's been getting overgrown as well, which then creates a fire risk and a fire hazard. As part of that, I've got to make sure that they can then have access through and around our property and up the hill over to our dam, so they've got a water source as well. So, there's kind of all these additional things that you're thinking about, and you're sort of going, right, so when I get up at 5:30 in the morning, I'll spend the first 2 hours going around the track, making sure the fences are right, making sure that I've done the spraying, gotten rid of any tea tree, how's the driveway looking?
Not the usual thing you think about. Like, I'm living in a townhouse. Not the usual thing you think about. I've got to get up and go and check all these fences. And it might help me just kind of understand, for people to understand as well, what does a traditional day look like you, obviously on sort of that big land of yours? And this is obviously with the fact that you're not traveling as much as you used to for work purposes. So obviously working at home right now. What does a typical day look like for you?
So it's different on a work day compared to a non-work day. Work day looks like probably get up around 5:30 with our toddler and our puppy, and go hell for leather with those two for the first hour or so, while my wife sleeps in a little bit because she's going to have to deal with them for the rest of the day while I go off to work. So really just sort of play with those, try to get outside with the both of them. We sort of like spending a lot of outside time, and little fella loves digging around in the dirt with his tractor and things like that. So sort of do that. And then it's either over here, which is probably about 2 or 3 meters detached cottage from our house, which we sort of Airbnb out. When it's empty, looking at working from there if I'm working from home. Otherwise, it's the commute into Canberra, which is a hour-long Audible drive, which has got me going through a lot of Audible books, and really enjoy that commute when I get to listen to books on the way in. Then it's either working with a client or working with integration QA and seeing what we've got on for the day. And then it's the commute back home, a bit of a decompression session, and straight into sort of helping out with dinner and bedtime routine. On a weekend day, which is not really what would have used to been a weekend sort of day, now is more another work day in terms of get up, do the same sorts of things, but I might take the dog for a walk around the perimeter. I'll take my little chainsaw, my axe, some spraying equipment and things like that, and we'll go and make sure there's no sort of overgrown trees growing up in through the fences. We'll make sure if any trees have fallen, we've sort of chopped those, collecting firewood, sort of coming back, looking at sort of having lunch with everyone, sort of having a bit more of a relaxed afternoon when it's going to be hot, and then sort of maybe do a few things in the afternoon, like do some spraying or, bit of a tidy up. The driveway quite often needs to be re-gravelled and raked and things like that. So either that or on the shovel for the afternoon. And then hopefully if I can, which I have managed to tonight, is get the Kamado smoker up and running and smoking something, some ribs or some brisket, or doing pizzas tonight, so something like that for the afternoon on a weekend.
Oh, mate, I've got to touch on that point, because I personally don't have a smoker, but a very good friend of mine actually does, and every time we go over, he's got something going on the smoker. Yeah, for people out there, I cannot stress enough. If I had the space to get a smoker, I'd be getting that smoker right now. It's fantastic. I don't know what you think about smoking different meats or different products, but yeah, I just absolutely love it. Have you had it for very long?
Yeah, so I've had it for about 2 years now, and getting more and more experienced with it, I guess, is the way to look at it. So today I've sort of got pizzas going. So I can double it as a pizza oven. So I've got pizzas going in it, but then it'll hold to about probably 250 to 300 degrees, even after we've finished pizzas, for about the next 6 to 8 hours, because it's sort of one of those insulated style smokers. And so I'm going to roast some almonds in there once we've finished the pizzas, just to use the heat. Otherwise the heat goes to waste. So
no, definitely
roast some almonds.
Oh no, that sounds like a sole reason to go to your place to actually try out that smoker and double it up for a pizza. Oh, that sounds good. You mentioned obviously Audible. So are you a big reader, obviously through audio now, as opposed to a book reading?
Yeah, really, really big. I think that has been one of the biggest things that I've done over the past couple of years that has really lifted what I do and the way I think about the world, really, is now through commuting, being able to, I didn't really make time to read books, but now with the Audible there, having the ability to just, get so much more knowledge into my brain has been exponential in my learning. I couldn't recommend, reading enough, whether it's if someone, likes to make time to read books or gets into Audible, if that's the way that people need to do it. It's been monumental in, what I've been able to achieve over the last few years.
I've got an interesting
I've got Audible share.
Hey, yeah, exactly. I've got an interesting double here for you. One, what was your favorite book, I guess, as of recently of all time, whichever that comes through. But two, what was the biggest, I guess, idea or mindset that you had that was challenged by something that you read that made you either change your mind or at least, stop and think like, okay, that's something that I've obviously had a long time thought, but this audio book or the book in particular, you really challenged that thought?
All right. So my second answer is going to be a little bit different to probably what you're expecting. First answer, I'll give you two books. First one's a little bit off pace, depending on who you are, and it's called Why Buddhism is True. And it's a scientific sort of approach to, I guess, Buddhism and meditation. And what I took away from that was a lot more about, meditation and contentness and that sort of, getting away from stressing about yesterday, thinking about tomorrow, and being present and content and showing gratitude for what you have in the moment was really powerful for me. And the other one was called Thinking in Systems. And I don't know if you've read that, but that's more around that sort of broader systems thinking and understanding, all the aspects that are going on within a complex system when you're sort of looking at it, rather than just sort of narrowing in the focus and starting to solution a problem over here. How is that problem either being exacerbated or going to affect all these different sort of flow on and bigger picture events that are happening either in that organization, in that community, in that ecosystem, whatever it might be, for me with calisthenics, for my body, so that's been a really big one.
Yeah, I was going to say, the first book you mentioned, my co-host Karen, he's read that fairly recently, I guess, in the last year or so, and we had a conversation about that one because he went into a big trend of, he wants to kind of understand Buddhism, all the different sort of religions, and understanding a little, kind of pulling out a little bit of each to understand, what fits with him, what doesn't, and the big one he's going through at the moment is Buddhism. So that I can't. It sounds like that book's an excellent book, but I haven't read that second one, so I'll put that down the list as one to pick up.
Yeah, I think it's by Donella Meadows, the systems thinking one. Yeah. And what I liked about the Buddhism one is it wasn't a really religious sort of style book. So if people are reading it thinking it's going to be really religious and, this is how to do Buddhism and, what Buddhism is all about, it's not as much about that, more around what they're actually sort of finding through some of those Buddhist practices around actually changes in the brain and, the body and things like that. So it was really interesting in that sense. The second point in terms of, what made me go, and sort of think about this, because I think there's a general sort of confirmation bias and a general kind of, you're going to read sort of what sparks your interest, and then what sparks your interest from that is probably going to lead on to the next. So what I noticed through a lot of my books is there's common themes and common kind of things that keep coming up. I'm like, that's really interesting. It's like, well, actually, wait a minute, let's take a systems approach here. You're sort of only continually reading the one genre and, sort of only continually getting that confirmation bias and that same hit of what you already believe. So you're gonna keep. So what the big thing for me was actually going, I sort of every now and again I like to sort of take a bit of a turn, because I read a lot of sort of not self-help, but personal development and that kind of business, corporate kind of knowledge, those sorts of books. I dive into some of the meditation stuff, but it was around going, actually, let's try some fiction kind of stuff, and listening to that every now and again, because I think you can listen to some fiction stuff and it can actually bring some really cool thinking and bring some more creativity to the way you think in terms of your life. So that one for me was going, actually, I'm also really enjoying every now and again having a break from those sort of books to pivoting to something that's a bit more fiction based. And the last one I read of that, I'm trying to think what it was called. It was actually recommended by Tim Ferriss in one of his 5 Bullet Fridays. I'll have to think of it. I'll have to get it to you.
Yeah, okay. If it pops into your mind, let me know. If not, we could probably put it in little comments below on it. It's actually interesting you mentioned that. I'm a massive fan of the nonfiction. And definitely, a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm not going to read fiction. I want to be reading about self-help / business / some type of things I want to be able to put into a pragmatic use. And it's interesting to note how just reading a little bit of fiction here and now again, or some topic completely different to not what you're putting the bias to, you even find you start connecting things from there back into other things that you start reading across, and you go, oh wow, actually that's actually helped me out in understanding something else and broadening it through. Recently I read Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. And the book and the context, I was like, it's not the type of book I really want to read. It doesn't have the right stuff for me, but it helped me link a lot of stories and a lot of things that I've read in other places, when actually that ended up being valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Look, I've got a couple of more questions for you, Trent, before I let you go. The number one I was going to ask you, though, was, imagine you had to put a post, social media posts out there, right? Somewhere that everybody in the world would go and see. What quotes or what posts, what would you put out there that everyone would see?
So my mantra over the past year, and I'll think of one for this year as well, because I like to have a bit of a thing. And so this has been really, really big for me, and really interesting when you apply it to see how context changes. And it's simple in terms of curiosity over judgment. So whenever you're sort of hearing something or someone say something, or you're working with an organization and there's some sort of conflict, being curious about why is that, what is driving that, what's behind that, taking that systems approach even into that, is going, where's that driven from, or what is that person's values and belief systems, and being genuinely curious about it before you be judgmental on it. And that for me has really changed a lot of my interactions throughout the past year, I think.
I like that. And I just wanted to talk to you about, you said you had different mantras as well for sort of different years. Is that a practice that you started very long ago, as one question? And two, do you have a general practice of goal setting?
So it has just officially become a practice as of today. What I noticed was it was a little sort of spiel that I heard when I did my executive coaching course, and it really landed and really resonated with me. And so I've kept it in the back of my head for a long time, and I sort of was referring back to it a lot last year. Now, coming into this conversation today, I was thinking, I really want to have something like that, because that's been really powerful that I can take into this year. You don't throw the old one out, you obviously keep that, but something to take along to this year as well. And that's something that I need to look at working with. In terms of goal setting, last year and the year before that is probably when I really sort of got into goal setting. And one of the big things with goal setting for me has been, and I don't know if you've read The Power of Habit, or if you get any of the emails with that, around setting up, I guess, systems to achieve goals, especially when they're a bit nebulous. So, for example, I want to get fitter this year. Yeah, that might be good. Even I want to be 65 kilos this year can have you chasing the wrong kind of results, or something like 70 kilos this year, because you could do anything, or detrimental activities to actually achieve that, compared to making it a system or part of your value in terms of I'll go to the gym 4 times a week this year, something like that. So trying to really, I guess, instill those systems that help you achieve your goals has been a big thing for me, and trying to align it with an identity aspect in terms of, I want to be a calisthenics athlete, and to achieve that, I will commit to 4 calisthenics specific sessions a week, with the aim to be able to do a full body planche by June.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like that. It's the way that you state it as well for yourself differently, to just purely saying, I'm going to be 75 kilos. No, you can identify what sort of individual do you want to be or become. Recently, I heard about this a couple of months ago from someone I was actually having a conversation with, and I went to the gym straight after that, and I was doing some squats, and it was basically like, am I a person that I'm going to go in there and do squats and that, and what's the reason I'm doing it? And it was more of I am a person who does this. It's not that, it's I'm going to go do this. And sometimes it's just, that's who I am. That's who I am. And it can get you in a bit of a state to go, what would I look like at the end of this year? Or what would I look like as achieving a set goal? So you'd be like, I'd be an individual training 4 times a day, 4 times a week, being able to do a plunge. that sort of way
Yeah.
to state it. So I think it's really powerful. My last question for you, before we sort of finish off and see where people can also contact you as well, is what's one little silly, random, either action, tradition, even object that you might have that gives you incredible joy? Just something little tiny that gives you incredible joy.
Something tiny little that gives me incredible. So I'm a big watch enthusiast.
Right. Okay.
So I'll often feel a little bit naked without a watch on. So I've got probably about 6 to 10 watches in the collection, but I'm always looking at getting something a little additional, or, how I can change up a strap on something to sort of make it a little bit different. So I think that's probably something for me.
Yeah, and how do you go about this? And it's just because I used to be a very big watch guy, but then digital watches came around, and now I was in this eternal struggle between counting my steps and having my tag, or wearing another watch. And I was like, oh, it's a bit of a mix and match. Did you ever get into the digital watch game at all?
So I've got.
Oh, mate, I've been thinking about this. Do I double up? Do I go the two? Yeah, okay.
So, and this one here isn't a watch. So this is the Whoop strap. I don't know if you see much of those.
So, got to ask you, what do you find about the Whoop strap? Recommend?
7 days in, so
right.
hard to gauge. Wanted to try something different, and really keen to know about the sleep, especially with a toddler and a puppy. So I wanted to see how the sleep and recovery play into the aspect of achieving my goals, my fitness goals. This year, I think I want to go a little bit harder in the calisthenics space as well. So I was like, okay, this is that bit of sort of, commitment and sort of discipline, I guess, or, the data as well to sort of show, okay, how you're going with it all. So that's been good. So I've got this one here, which isn't actually a watch, but does all that kind of, it doesn't do steps, but, it does all that kind of fitness kind of data. And then today, because I'm at home on the farm, I've got sort of my rough and tough beta watch on with a rubber strap. But then, for work, I'll wear my nice sort of bracelet watch, but I'll have this on this year and we'll see how we go.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to hit you up, obviously offline, to talk about that Whoop, because I've been very much in two minds about wearing the Whoop and seeing the benefits from it. So now I know another individual who's got it, which will be really good. Trent, man, really enjoyed obviously talking to you and through this conversation. Thanks obviously for sharing a lot of those things. If individuals want to reach out to you, so either personally or professionally, where can they actually reach you?
Yeah, so you can search me on LinkedIn. I haven't actually done a funky, easy URL for LinkedIn. So just search Trent Mason on LinkedIn and you'll find me there as practice lead for Authentic Agile. If you want to reach out to me privately, it's trent.l.mason@gmail. And, you can send me any emails or questions or queries if you've got anything to follow up on this. So that'd be great.
Excellent. Is there any last words you want to leave before we turn off here this conversation and leave it at that?
No, I think it's been great. It's been a wonderful conversation and good to catch up with you again. Look forward to next time we can actually meet in person again when there's a bit of this COVID sort of restrictions easing, and looking forward to getting up to sunny Queensland again and spending some time up there with you again. So that'd be great. Have to have a gym session together.
100%. Well, when you come back out up here, for sure, we're going to have to be doing some planches. I'll just be pretending, but you'll be doing the full one for sure. Trent, mate, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us here at the Mere Mortals. Take care. Thank you, everybody.